What's good, y'all? It's your boy Herb.
And it's your girl Mo.
And welcome to our soon-to-be World-Renowned podcast, Young, Black, and Figured It Out. What up, though?
What it do?
Whatever we tell it. How you feeling?
Lovely.
Are you?
Yeah.
Why are you feeling lovely?
You know, surprisingly, I woke up and I was in a good mood, which is not like me.
Yeah. You woke up like this?
I woke up like this.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay. I love
thank
that.
you.
That's what's up.
How you feeling?
Amazing. The last time we said we was going to change it to something else. Phenomenal.
Yes.
Yes, I'm feeling phenomenal. I am.
For
Especially, well, life,
Okay.
for one. But then this amazing episode we about to talk about.
Woot, woot.
You excited?
Yes, I am.
Bet. So right now, what we usually do at this time is talk about what did we learn this week, but
Ain't nobody got time for
we ain't
that.
got time for that. Why we ain't got time for that?
Because we have beautiful guests here with
We
us
got
today.
two special guests in the building. Let's go ahead and clap it up for the special guests in the building. So we have y'all go ahead and introduce yourselves. So we start with Wak.
Yeah,
Work our way
so some of you already have heard me on previous episodes, but my name is Joaquin. Everybody calls me Wak.
A regular.
Yes, I am. I pretty much run Asylum Studios. So if you enjoy these episodes and the wonderful editing that goes on, that is because it was me.
Yes. Amen.
Shameless plug, and we support it.
Yeah. Here Wak up. He'll get you right, y'all.
But mainly, I just enjoy the conversations that y'all have on this podcast. So it's never a job. It's just me listening in, wishing that I was a part of it, and and putting in my own 2 cents from home.
Yeah, we appreciate
Sometimes
that.
I even text them like, this part, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but no, I'm always appreciative to be on your show.
Yes, welcome back.
Welcome back. And just to let y'all know, he's not playing because after every podcast, we have a podcast afterwards.
Yes,
like,
we
yo,
do.
this is what I was thinking. Be like, dang, we should have said that.
Always a
So
good
that's
time.
That's dope. Okay, so yes, so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Pass to our next special guest.
My name is Shana Guadalupe Guzman.
Yes.
I am a pediatric psychiatric nurse practitioner, and I am a Chicana and an Indigenous American, among many things.
Ooh, we are so happy to have you here, girl. Yes.
I'm happy to
Yes,
be
welcome.
here.
Yeah, we got to have you here. Actually, with the intro, I was like, dang, we got to have another episode about something else too. Okay, good. All right. So, so you're probably thinking, like, what is this episode about to be about? This is about to be about one of the most important topics that we could talk about, and that is Black Panther, right? Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And so we got to ask, is Wakanda really forever? Because we got some really deep feelings. And I would say really going through and watching kind of response to this movie is a lot of mixed opinions. So
Yes.
it's like, oh, let's go ahead. And that's no pun intended. So let's go ahead and actually talk about that, right? Have some good conversations. So we wanted to maybe walk through some of the context, right? And then ask people how they felt really leading up to the movie.
Right.
Because for me, I think it was mixed. And folks who maybe did not or aren't as familiar with the Black Panther series. So this, I want to say 2018,
Yes.
February is when the first one came out. And when that one came out, I would say, and people can chime in on this, it was a lot of momentum behind that.
Absolutely.
For many reasons, one of which, and not the least important, was how it had Black representation and what it did. Even from just the folks who saw the trailers, who knew kind of about the comics a little bit, this was a big deal, right? And then not only that, they have one of the best, I would say, actors, especially when it came to celebrating Blackness
Yes.
with Chadwick. Because he did 42, he was Thurgood Marshall.
was.
It was like anything when it was some Black historical figure, it was
James
Chadwick.
Brown,
He did.
He did it all.
He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
dancing. Oh, he's good. So so it was a lot of momentum. Did y'all feel that too with the first movie?
Yeah, definitely. With the first movie, I saw everything, every reason why the hype was real. It was the first Marvel movie for sure that had any kind of representation, but not only representation, it was, Black directed, it checked all of the boxes. Like all of the major characters were truly represented, and they did not skim on the character development for every one of those characters that we cared about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely felt that.
And an amazing cast. From
Yeah.
Angela
Oh, yeah.
Bassett to Michael B. Chadwick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Absolutely.
I mean, so exciting. It was hugely culturally important in so many ways. And I think that there was a lot of beauty and a lot of excitement building up to it on a lot of fronts, like cinematically,
Yeah.
you know, the excitement about what it was going to look like, how it was going to be, how it was going to feel.
Yeah.
But then also the director, right? Like he's fantastic. He's got a lot of relevance as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
The actors in it, like there were so many things that were promising, exciting, beautiful
Yeah.
about it.
Yes,
Yeah, that was
like
Ryan
Ryan
Coogler.
Coogler,
Yeah.
I like the clothing and everything, the bright colors, the way, I don't know, the community, that kind of like energy that they put into it.
Yeah.
And so while you're watching it, you feel like you're in it or you're a part of it. It's like, oh no, this could be my family, or this is how we would see ourselves if not for slavery. It's like we're kings, we're queens, we're greatness. It was all those things. Ugh.
Yeah, and even so, how if like you said, if not for slavery, we could see ourselves for sure. And then even a nod to like how you should see yourselves now. Like for people coming up, it's like, yeah, this is that was a great like representation matters in multiple facets, and that was a great example of that, right? So yeah, that was really good, and then it did not disappoint.
Right.
It was like I want to say at one point in time, and this is before I want to say Endgame came out or whatever it was came out that actually beat it, but it was like the number one. I think globally grossing movie in the box office, right? And now it's even still top 3. I think I was reading on it with over $1.2 billion in sales in the box office. So that was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, even just
You know?
like featuring with Killmonger's whole point of noticing how like Wakanda left him there, and like his dad wanted to fight all the wrongs that were happening against brown and black people. Like there was this whole like breaking of generational curses type of thing because Chadwick had to like right the wrongs of his dad. Like things were not right. They did not protect us like they should have. And that, I felt like that was such a beautiful depiction of what could have been or how things could have been. And we just all saw ourselves in some character one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, I think so too. And I also think, though, that there was a lot of ambitious content there. And sometimes some things were pulled back, it felt to me, because of what some of the commentary could have been, right? Like there was definitely these big, beautiful ideas, and we were looking at them and we were starting them. And then there was a little bit of a like, let's pull back, let's not push it too much. You know what I'm saying,
Right.
But like, you know, this is also a Disney movie, so we got to make sure this is a Disney movie, you know?
Absolutely.
Like very artfully done.
And I thought sometimes to that point, I thought they still had enough of those things that were like impactful and push the limits around truth that it matters. So for example, when I forgot his name, but he walked in and scared Shuri in the first movie. She's like, "Don't scare me like that, colonizer." And I'm like, yeah, like that hit me. Like that was powerful. A black woman calling a white man a colonizer in the movie. It's like, oh yeah, that pushed it a little bit. And to your point, I think there's a lot more we could have dug deeper into to have some more of those conversations, or at least start those, right, within the movie. So I definitely hear what you're saying with that, where we could have dug deeper in that.
Right.
But for the people who, it's like, if you know, you know. It's like, oh, yeah, I know what you mean by that, you know?
Yeah, it's the subtle things, just the little subtle nuances that make movies like that great. The people that it impacts, that it's meant to impact, will understand. The people that it's not, it will fly right over, and there's no questioning it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that was the first movie. I'm not gonna lie. I walked out of there like, wow, this is one of the best movies
Yeah.
I've ever seen. A lot of people who maybe that one was less mixed in terms of the emotions to me. And then so leading up in between the first movie, leading up to the second movie, a lot happened.
Yes.
Majorly, Chadwick passed away from cancer. I want to say, was it colon cancer?
Yes,
Yeah.
it
It
was.
was colon cancer, which was a major hit to, so not just the movie, but to, I think, the culture in general, the movie industry in general. So
Yeah.
just lost a great person, but also was the centerpiece of that movie. So there was a lot of conversation about how is this movie going to be? How are they going to go forward without the, one of the main stars in this movie? So yeah, what else am I missing in between that time? There's a lot that happened. I know you're the movie person, so talk to us.
I mean, a lot happened in between movies, and if you want to throw in like the actual events of the world, you know what I mean?
Right,
Yes.
right.
So I think that added to the expectations of this next movie.
Dig into that some when you say the events of the world, because that's a good point.
Right. So that definitely added something. It definitely added time in between these movies, and like you said, with Chadwick's death and everything, there was and how great that first movie was and how impactful it was.
Absolutely.
I think all of that added to the extremely high expectations that were brought onto this next project.
Yeah.
That, in all honesty, if Chadwick hadn't passed and you know, and all of that hadn't gone down, I don't know if the sequel would have lived up to the hype because the first movie was so big and they had to bring it down and make it less about Wakanda itself at that time and make it more about Chadwick. Because I've watched a few things that have discussed the script that leaked that involved Chadwick. And it was very much going to be about him and his struggling with certain aspects and, you know, and with what he's going through.
Yeah.
So it would have been a more grounded movie dealing with Chadwick himself.
Yeah.
That it would have been a great movie, but would it have felt the same, would it have given the same impact that the first did?
When you say the things of the world, you're talking about the pandemic, right?
Pandemic,
and then the political.
correct.
Yeah. I mean, I think that impacted it a lot when you're looking at decisions that were made cinematically and directorially and you know, by all of the producers. It was hugely impactful.
Yeah, good point. And even, you know, when you said that, I'm like, oh, you know what? From 2018 to there was a racial reckoning.
A lot.
Like that, I just like, oh, that is a lot of context.
Yes.
That had all this was before that time period, like George Floyd and whatnot, right? So that's a big factor in what they would have thought they had to do in the movie, right?
Which makes sense because you saying that if it would have focused more on like the Black Panther, that would have made sense just toward how Marvel movies go. It'd have been okay that Wakanda wasn't completely expanded anymore. We weren't focusing so much on that place, but because he's gone, the fact that they had to keep it expanded might have caused all these mixed reviews. Actually, like, oh, maybe that's too much to focus on versus bringing it into some form of focus. You know?
Yeah, and this actually leads up to the question I have for you all. Like, what were so with all of that going on, from the pandemic, the first movie, which I think was very well received, racial reckoning, as I called it.
Yeah.
What were you all's thoughts and feelings leading into this second movie? Right, like how did you feel? Like what was the level of anticipation or not? You know, going into it.
I mean, I think with the racial reckoning that we're talking about, right? There, to me, was an added level of responsibility because now, if we're not looking at it, you're choosing not to look at it, right? Like before, maybe it wasn't in everybody's face. It's in my face every day because of my life experiences, right? But that's not the truth for everybody. And now, it's in everybody's face all the time, every day. So if we're not talking about it, if we're not making it about it, that's intentional. And so to me, there was a lot of expectation about the intentions in what this movie is conveying and communicating. And also a lot of responsibility to make sure that the way that you're presenting this specific Marvel character, Marvel world, is what you're meaning to say about how you feel in this context. So I had a lot of expectations.
As far as the expectations go, I had very reserved expectations, mainly because of Chadwick's passing and the fact that they, you know, I follow all of the movie news and everything as they go along. So I already knew that, that they weren't going to recast him, that they were going to honor him in this movie. I just had no idea what that would look like.
Right.
So for me, I'm like, before I hate this movie, you know what I mean? Like, let me just experience it. Let me go in with an open mind and let's see what they do. And I thought that, and those were some of the positive sides of that movie is they honored him in a very great way. Also, another thing that really impacted this movie, I don't know if we want to get into that, but it was just like, also the actress, I forget what
Letitia.
Wright. Yeah, she was going. There were some little controversies
Yes.
when it came to her, and
Yeah.
everything is politicized. So it kind of, it left some people wondering like what her whole intentions were and all of that. So I think that also kind of probably was a bad taste in some people's mouths and stuff like that. So
That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, I'm like, Letitia Wright, I'm like,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
I'm like, that's Letitia. But yeah, okay, I got you. Good. Yes, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so you following what was going on and knowing they weren't going to recast and knowing Chad was passing and how much he was a centerpiece of that movie, you went in like, okay, I don't have reserved expectations. Let me just experience.
Correct, because we didn't know who this is a Black Panther movie.
Yeah, without the
and we currently don't have a Black Panther, and it's like who are they passing the mantle off to? The fun parts of it, we're thinking like, who would they?
Right.
Like, who do I want for them to pass it to?
Yeah.
And like those kind of thoughts. And as it got a little bit closer, you start to see the feminine silhouette in the costume. So, okay, so it's definitely going to a female. And like those were the fun aspects going into it. But the simple fact that I knew that Chadwick was no longer going to be the Black Panther, it already put my expectations lower than if he would have been alive.
Yeah.
But I think I learned a lesson with Marvel movies and shows since the pandemic. And that is, don't expect too much because you will be, they're going to let you down if it's not what you want. And then it's going to end up being worse for you as a moviegoer.
Yeah.
So I've learned to taper those expectations and to try to go in with just
Neutral.
As a neutral body, like, listen, this is going to be a movie that, and I want to see it play out. And I just want to feel the emotions as it goes through it, without me, trying to think too far ahead and automatically going in angry, because if I go in angry at this movie, I'm not going to like anything. You know what I mean?
No, that makes, what about for you?
I should have done that. I regret the way I went into it, because when I tell you I was excited from the end of it in 2018. You remember, we went back another time just to write notes, because there were so many great themes and greatness happening. So I was ready. I was like, it took years. There were so many delays, and then he passed. There was just so much happening that I was like, okay, once this movie comes out, it'll bring back that level of peace and that like joy within me to see us on screen. You know what I mean? The way that we were just celebrated. And I always felt like I was like the general. Like I was just ready to see my girl up there. And I didn't know what they would do, but I believed there was so much greatness of a foundation that there's no way you can't build on that, right? And then when the trailer came out and I cried from the trailer, oh my, it was beautiful. The music was on point, and I'm just watching it like, I can't believe, like, it's going to be so good. I was anticipating
Greatness.
Pure amazingness, and that's not what I got. And I should have gone with less expectations. Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And similar, I had mixed emotions because of the first movie, and life imitates art, art imitates life. Yeah. And so the first movie was more than just a movie. It's like, okay, I'm unpacking this from the multiple layers of life, right? The relationship with the father in that, right? Like the relationship he had with, I forgot Lupita's character's name.
Is it Nikia?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So that relationship, right? And like their relationship. And then him taking the mantle and what that actually means, and how Killmonger was the villain, but the villain because of how life actually created it that way. His context made it that way.
Yeah.
And everything he said made sense, but he was villainized because of that. It's like, wow, that happened. Like, this was really art imitating life, right? And vice versa. So it was a lot. So that movie meant more to me than just a movie. And I know it meant more to the culture than just a movie.
Right.
So when Chadwick passed, I'm not going to lie, I was tight. I'm like, what? I'm like, come on now. The universe is cruel. It's like, we can't get anybody. It's like, what? Malcolm, Martin, Nelson? Now I was hot.
Yeah.
So I was already angry with the movie going this. I'm like, all right, it's going to be hard for me to like this. But I secretly wanted to be surprised. Like, I want this to be amazing.
Yeah.
And to be great going into that. So really walking into the movie without Chadwick and then seeing the trailer. I'm like, oh man, okay, this is gonna be done right. It's gonna be hard to watch though, but it's gonna be done right.
Right.
And so that was really my thoughts leading up to it, especially after the first one was so amazing. Right. So then when we got there and watched it.
You know, I gotta say, just before we go to that piece of it, my expectations were like yours. They were up there. I was excited about it. And then I thought, because of the political context when the movie was coming out, when it was being made, I thought the things that we implied and subtly made so that people who needed to know, they knew, right? If it was for you, you would get it. I thought we would be bigger with that. My expectations were, look at what's happening in the world. Now those things that we stepped up to, we're going to walk into in this movie. And so my expectations were even higher. And I was thinking, this is going to be powerful. And I can't wait for this power to come out. And y'all see that trailer where they were like, laying up the music and they built it up to Kendrick Lamar. I mean, like, I was like,
amazing.
This is it. This is it. And so my expectations were really high.
Through the roof.
And that makes a lot of sense about like so this movie and what it meant to multiple cultures, right? And mainly Black and brown folks, right? Everything that folks experienced since the first one to now, and I don't know if it's fair or not, but yeah, that movie is a representation. So it's like, hey, you dove into some things in the first one, like like you said, it's time to do that again in a deeper way. And that's actually a valid point. And I think I was so frustrated with the movie, I didn't even allow myself to get there. I'm just like, I don't even want to be here. I'm like, I don't even want to be here. But yeah, it's like, okay, this again, I wanted to be pleasantly surprised. So like, what happened for y'all when y'all saw it? How did it go? How did it go? How was this movie to you all? Let's start there. What was the initial?
I went in eyes wide open, ready, and I sat next to you, who was not eyes wide open and ready.
Man, I was done.
So I'm here like, come on, we can do this. Try to be encouraging and hoping for the best. And I'll say the first initial scenes were so gorgeous. Like, my heart broke. I cried. I mean, everyone wearing white doing the funeral service. And for anyone who has not seen this movie, you were planning not to see this movie by this time. So at this point, so there are all the spoilers coming.
Yeah, for sure.
But like when you saw his painting and the drumming and the procession and the beautiful honor that everyone put up the sign, it was just so gorgeous. And then when they lifted him up, I mean, I'm bawling. And then the little Marvel pictures of just him, it was so beautiful, right? And then Angela Bassett killed every scene she was in. I felt like she carried the grief that we all had of missing him, and completely executed in such powerful ways, like standing up for Wakanda, trying to stand in his stead as the leader without overshadowing him, still honoring him. There were so many things that started in the movie that had me like, okay, we're gonna do this. And then we got to the middle and everything fell apart. I don't know what happened. The movie got disjointed. There was just too much added in and trying to force things. There was poor leadership. There was no one to carry the mantle, really, so no one could carry this movie like Chadwick could. It was honestly an overall disappointment. And I will say the fact that it's really two movies merged into one is what killed me, because I don't think either side really got the development they deserved or needed to make it a great movie. But
you mean like two movies of having to deal with Chadwick's passing, and then also the other side about what was the name of the community?
Underwater.
Underwater.
Yes.
So it's like that development, and then still having to deal with Chadwick. It's like two separate movies.
Two separate things, because if they just focused on the grieving and trying to grow the new Black Panther, or at least make that make sense, I think we'd had a better shot of a well put together movie. Or if they negated that part and just focused on the honoring in the beginning, and then focused on I can't pronounce it.
Talokan.
Yes, that community. I don't want to butcher it. I'm so sorry, but because their whole layout and everything about them was perfection.
That was the best part of the movie.
They were, oh my god, and then Lethal too. They were amazing, and they didn't get enough screen time, I swear.
So and that's what I enjoyed from the movie. Now, again, I mentioned how the script that was presented to Chadwick, but he decided not to read it. That script has since come out, and there are discussions on that script and the differences between the current movie and that script. those were things that were a part of the movie originally. And getting back to what I enjoyed from this movie, I think that this movie really was, and we discussed it off mic, this movie was really the coming together of Black and brown people who were essentially created from the same thing. Because Talokan, how beautiful it was underwater, was Wakanda for them. You know,
made from vibranium.
Yes, it was all made from vibranium, and we come from the same thing. So, and even though Talokan, like Namor, even though he knew it, he came to them like saying, "Hey, so they're trying to take it now, and I'm coming to you first. Like, I don't want to beef with you. Like, I don't want us to go to war. But if it comes down to that, we will go to war." And like, and that whole thing, and just the not even the misunderstanding, but the fact that Black and brown people see each other, even in real life, as in some cases, they see each other as not being common people when we are. We come from the same roots. We come from the same thing. And I think that's the underlying tone of this movie. Whereas the first movie was strictly about, you know, the beauty in your culture, you know, and Black culture and all of that, and everything that would have, the way things would have flourished without slavery, and all the same things that we talked about. But this had a little bit more thrown in there than just Black culture. It introduced the brown culture and how we're fighting the same fight.
Yep.
Against the same the same monster, quote unquote. You know what I mean? And I think that it highlighted it very beautifully. And I think you're right. The story was all over the place, but those were the rewrites. Those were, how are we going to do that? How are we going to introduce this other character that there's a TV show coming from, or there's a TV show coming in later? That character, I'm not looking forward to that TV show because of that character. I'm like, yeah, she was like just out of place.
Ironheart?
Yeah, Ironheart.
Yeah, that was just unnecessary.
Riri. I don't know. She was just a little out there, but she might be true to the character in the comics or whatever. But so I try not to think about that either. It's like, I'm not familiar.
So you enjoyed, for the most part.
I enjoyed it for the most part. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of the Talokan, the Namor, the fact that they, because Namor in the comics, I don't believe that it had the same backstory, because it was supposed to be Atlantis in the comics.
Yeah, and it was very like Grecian Romanesque. We were not looking at any type of Mayan representation, any type, like that wasn't there.
Right, that wasn't there. So that was Ryan Coogler's idea to make this about Black and brown, relations, essentially to dive deeper into that. And I really loved, because obviously that's not the true way that he got his name, but I it's been a while since I've seen it now. But El Niño Sin Amor is what they said, what they called him, because his mother passed away, and now he's El Niño Sin Amor, the child without love, and how he cut that down to just call himself Namor. I was like, oh, that's so damn creative, So there was a lot of that essence, and I want to say that Wakanda Forever really touched on that culture.
Yeah, so I actually want to come back to that and talk about some of those things, but I want to hear how you felt about the movie. Like, what was your take on it?
Yeah, so I thought the way that Chadwick Boseman, right, was honored, that was beautiful. It was really two movies. It was really two movies, like you were saying. And those pieces of it, they were well done. They were woven together. They evoked emotion in me. I loved the way that they handled that and honored him. So that piece of it was really beautiful and really enjoyable for me. And it came up throughout. Like we had the funeral scene. We had all of that beautiful cinematography, and then we had references throughout the film, and I loved the way that they did that. And I think that it was initially so exciting to me to see Black and brown people on the screen together in this way, both empowered which is not the experience that we're looking at here in this country, right? We're looking at disempowerment, and we're looking at what they showed a little bit, right? We're looking at different types of enslavement and oppression and, you know, genocide truly in my culture. And so I thought that that was such an exciting idea, and it was really loaded for me. And so then to see these are the two people, we are empowering them, and now while they are being oppressed by the same oppressor, attacked by the same people, we're going to put them against each other. If you're going to take our culture and put it up on the screen, and the first time you do that, we're going to be the villains, I feel some type of way about that. And it didn't have to be that way. So I love that they brought in, like you said, they recreated and brought in this beautiful world in Talocan, and how we get to be seen in that way. I love that piece of it. But what in the comics, we're looking at this like, you know, Grecian Roman kind of deal. And so if you're going to take this and you're going to put this on the screen, why are you going to choose that and make that the people that Wakanda are fighting? That piece of it, like, was I have in my mind reimagined a story where we could have handled Namor and Talocan in a completely different way, still gotten the development that we needed to get to the other side of what's coming up in Marvel. And so I was heartbroken. You know, I was frustrated and heartbroken at the way that was handled. And I think there were so many beautiful aspects and so much potential. And so to see that fall short, that was really rough for me.
That actually makes a ton of sense. And I think for me, when I was watching that development and still in my feelings about Chadwick throughout the whole movie,
He was.
and what that meant. So two things about the movie in general. First, I thought Angela Bassett and the strength of losing a son, which happens so many times in Black culture, whether it be to anything, you know, a lot of the structure set up for us to not make it, right? People succumb to that. And the way she handled that, right, was great. Like at one point in time, and I resonated, like, for the culture or for Black mothers, whatever it is, like, have I not given enough? Like when she lost her, she said those words, have I not given enough? I'm like, wow, that touched my core, because I felt that, like, in my real life when things happen with my family, or I know people have experienced that, like, have I not given enough? So that was powerful. So the way the way she was in that movie was amazing. And the fact that they killed her off killed me. That's when I almost left. I'm like, you know what? Let me put my shoes on. It's time to go. So that was tough. And then, so the co-development of the two cultures, right? Because we're really looking at Black, right, and Latina culture and developing that, which I really appreciated how you did that. The part of it that was hard for me was, I think, in some ways, they had to have, I think, the truth of what happens a lot of times in our culture, which is there really isn't, I think you spoke to this, sometimes there really isn't this spirit of camaraderie for whatever reason. And I think that was done intentionally by the way white culture has done that, right? Like, that's intentional. If people who are oppressed come together, that's scary for folks who are trying to be the oppressors, right?
Yes.
And so they had to create, I think, that type of dynamic to show this is what happens. And even while they were doing that, they showed flashes of this is how it could be. So when Shuri and, what was the main character's name? Namor. When those two were connecting, I'm like, okay, I see. Like, this is how this could be, right? And then a misunderstanding, which was, I'm trying to get my daughter back, right? When Lupita came in, got her back. Like, that was a misunderstanding that created what led to war. And then by the end of it, though, came back full circle. Like, hey, we don't have to do this. And I thought it was powerful at the end when they both showed up, Shuri as the Black Panther and Namor together. And it's like, okay, this is a different, and I don't know what's going to happen next, but a different direction, which I really appreciated how that kind of was like the climax of that. So, but, and this is what I asked Wak and said to you, that makes a lot of sense in terms of for representation. So this is the first time we dive into this, and the first time we do, it's villainizing the people. I get that, right? And so I wonder, Wak, you didn't mention that. Did you have a different perception when you saw the representation on that? And like, how did you respond?
Yeah, so for me, that is it was a representation of real life. And you have to take into accord Ryan Coogler is from Oakland. So
that happens in a real way.
That's
right.
gang, that's gang territory. So growing up, it's more natural, especially in that atmosphere, that you have the rival gangs, and within gangs, you don't see diversity. You know what I mean? So it's generally a lot of black and brown conflicts, right? When the underlying story is, listen, we're fighting each other, but we're not the ones that are really at odds,
Right.
You know, so I think, and if you look at Ryan Coogler's movies, a lot of that has to do with it. Any black or Latino directors who come from the West Coast have similar takes on that, and it's a lot of gang mentality set to movie. You know what I mean? Not necessarily that's their mentality, but that's just how life is viewed on that side. So I think I just came in with that thought. Yes, you make a great point that this is the first time that we see black and brown people who are both empowered, and instead of coming together, they clap. But generally, in real life, that happens. That happens first, and then we find a commonality amongst each other that makes us band together and fight the good fight, the true fight. Right? Because we have to go through a trauma together to realize you are not my enemy.
Yeah.
You know, again, like we said, we come from the same place, even though it looks a little different and the cultures are a little bit different.
Right.
If you really dig down to the core of it, we come from the same place.
Yours might be
Built
underwater.
from the same thing. You know what I mean?
Ours might be out in the woods.
Different,
But it's the same.
You're
but we
blue,
come from
I'm
the
not.
same
Yeah, I get it.
source.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, though. Gang life is a part of our cultures, yeah, right? Like, I get that. And that's been represented.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
We know that.
For sure.
But that's not everything that's in my culture.
Yeah.
So if you're going to come and you're going to be presenting that, sure, you can choose to present the conflict. You can choose to present the gang life, right? But we're reduced to that a lot. I don't need to be reduced to that again.
Correct.
What if we show these other parts about us?
Yeah.
It is not always like that. You know, like, I'm from the Bay Area, right? Like, so I grew up close to Oakland, and I know what that looks like. And I
Yeah.
know the way that culture has struggled and people have, like you said, been pitted against each other.
Yeah.
I see it, I know it, I live it, and that's not the only thing I see, that's not the only thing I know, and that is not the only thing I live. And so if you're going to choose to put us up on the screen again, and you're going to have the opportunity to show the other side,
Yeah.
Right.
and you're already giving us power, right? Like, why are you going to walk up to giving us power, walk so close to a connection like they did, right? When Sherry came to, Sherry came down to Talocan, and here we are, and we're connecting, and I'm showing you my world, and I'm being vulnerable. I don't let nobody into this, and come into this,
Yeah.
and look with me. And then one disagreement, and suddenly, let's kill all our people.
Yeah.
These two characters who have built their lives around their people are now willing to sacrifice their people for one misunderstanding, and that's how you're going to put us up on the screen. It didn't have to be that way. That was a choice, and I'm not saying that I know everything about it. Maybe it's going to make sense in the next movie. I hope it does. I hope we're going to go somewhere else with it, but what I'm watching is a decision that is telling a story that's been told, that is pitting people against each other who have been pitted against each other, but it's not telling me the other side of the story. And I think that there was a huge missed opportunity in that.
Yeah.
I almost, so I agree with that and almost reframe how I saw that process. Cause I think, so when I was watching that happening, it was almost as if I think, well, first, I don't often see both of our cultures having power at the same time that's equal or greater than like their white counterparts. So I actually value that. Like, here are the two most powerful nations, really.
Yeah.
It's like, and so we decide what's gonna happen. So I actually like that.
Yeah.
But then I think along the way, some of the things I did notice was like the understanding of what you just described, like happening. Like, they demonstrated that process. So at one point in time, when Telucan, I'm gonna get it right. They came to Wakanda, and like the streets were being flooded with water and people were dying, and you could see kind of, I saw Shuri and the general kind of realize like, wow, like this is happening because of us being at war. Like I actually like that. And then in the very beginning when they first met each other, when Shuri and Angela Bassett were out like in the out in the woods,
Like at
and
that beach kind of
at like the
area.
water,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, listen, I could have at any point in time wiped you out,
Yes.
but I'm coming here to actually, we need to make a decision together to go forward." So I actually saw it similar, but almost reframed in that that conflict allowed us to learn about what we shouldn't do while the conflict was happening. You know, so that's how I was interpreting that. But I think both and are valid. Like as you're talking, I'm like, yeah. That makes sense. And I want to hear from you too. Like, what's your thoughts were?
It's just, so listen to everything Chanel said. I'm in agreement because, like I said, it should have been two separate movies based off of all that they try to pack in.
There's a lot happening.
Right, because we didn't get enough of Talokan. Did I get it?
We gonna get there.
We gotta get there.
Thank God.
The Telecom like lifestyle, and I think we saw such a small snippet which showed so much but not enough. So like the way that they presented Ironheart and Shuri with clothing, and they were so kind and peaceful. I mean, yes, they just kidnapped them, but they treated them with so much respect and honor. And then watching, like, the people are just going about their day, and he's telling her his whole life story and walking through, and I'm like, they live like normal, kind humans, much like what we see in Wakanda. And I'm like, there's so much more going on than we were able to see. And I'm like, that's what really irked me, because I'm like, if you were gonna show that, you need to show it all. Like, show the kids in the market, show just how you showed Wakanda, because we love Wakanda. And it's like, why can't we love Talokan as well? You know what I mean? It's like there was a respect between that big guy who fought the general. Like, he didn't just kill her because he could have multiple times. He felt like there was an honorable thing between the two of them. They were both warriors.
They called each other warrior. I love that.
It was like,
that was tough.
yes, there is something about these people that is way more distinguished than we are able to see. And yes, they're lethal. And I mean, amazing. They're so swift, you wouldn't even see it coming. And it's like, wow, I'd be afraid. But at the same time, I would love to know more. And there could have been way more shown.
If there were two different, the development, no one got the proper development. That's cool. And I want to switch and just ask another question. So watching this too, I'm thinking about also, like, in my brain, it's functioning in this way, but like gender empowerment, right? So I'm watching the main character now be a black woman, and then even in Telukan, okay, every time we're gonna look like,
It's like,
make
give
sure
us a
we
confirmation.
good. So
She says it so much nicer than I do.
right, for the episode, we just gonna like leave out us saying it and just use your voice every time. So, but like the number 2 person was a woman. I love that. Like, that was dope. And then again, the general, even though they killed me how they did her in this movie, it's okay, power and strength, right? But in the very first scene when they went in and tried to steal whatever it was, like all of the, what's the warrior's name? The name of the warriors, we figured it out.
Don't get me wrong.
It's okay. They came out and it was
That's why I
all
say
women
the
in
general.
that. Yeah, it was all women in that, right? So if
Yes.
I think about that, actually,
The Dora Milaje.
the Dora Milaje,
Thank you.
my man. So I was watching like, yeah, okay. I actually valued that. I
Yes.
value how strong Angela was. So I wonder from just from a female's perspective, did that stand out to you at all? Like, did that matter in this movie?
It mattered so much in the first movie. It was my expectation in this movie. You know, it was like, oh no, we are bosses. And we run things, like, we don't have to wait or assume a man will take care of us. Because the way that the general and the Dora Milaje protected the Black Panther every time, it was the most beautiful thing every time. There was no questioning. They were ready she was just hit that thing and they were on guard. I'm like, yes, because that's what we do. We will protect our Black men no matter what. And you know how I feel. Like, I promise you, I am hurt. So when the general got demoted, I felt the demotion. And I did not deserve it. It's like, I understand. I didn't do everything I was supposed to do, but let me make it up because my heart is here. Like, where else was I supposed to go? This is all I know. But yes, as a woman, especially watching Angela, it was, Shuri was probably the only female character I did not feel I could identify with, besides Ironheart, who I'm not remembering at all. Because as intelligent as they both are, it's like, I love that tech brain. And for any of our like STEM women out there or STEAM women out there, amazing. I'm not one, unfortunately, but
Yeah,
honestly,
that's dope. Yeah, that
you know
was
what I
dope.
mean?
Right,
But
right.
they didn't allow them to stay in their lane as much and showcase all that intelligence like we saw in the first one as
Right,
much.
for
Because
sure.
in the first one, it was highlighted in
makes a lot of
different
sense.
ranges so much better.
Yeah.
But that's my personal beef.
No, that's fair.
What about you,
Chanel, how
Chanel?
about you?
You know, I love the way that they empowered a lot of women in the first one. I love the way that they empowered a lot of women in this one. I struggled with the way they portrayed Shiri in this one. And here, you know, the thing about it is, you're giving me a character who, in the first movie, is relational and is playful and is passionate about her people and her country and moving forward and empowering herself and sharing that power with other people. And then they give us in the beginning of this movie her working so hard to save her brother, right? And her passion and commitment to her family. And they give us that desperation. And then they give us her grief, right? And in her grief, I don't see that self-directed anger that I would expect to see in grief, but grief is weird. It does weird things, right? So, like, I'm not trying to say you should grieve in any way. But then when we do get to, like, an intense depiction of her grief, we see her willing to sacrifice her people. I know that y'all are really powerful. I know that this is dangerous, and I'm so mad. I don't care. Take my people and put them at war because I'm grieving too much, right? Like, that depiction, it didn't make any sense to me. You didn't bring me along with you to help me see how she changed that much.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this person is completely different. And here we are, flip it over, and now everybody go die. My grief is making me crazy. Right? Like, the way that I'm seeing it is, here's a woman who's irrational, emotional, gonna sacrifice her people. The first decision she makes as a Black Panther. Yeah, so I felt that was disempowering for women, and I did not like the way that grief was represented. I agree, though, Angela Bassett, the way they represented her grief, the way that she carried it, I was in the story with her. I was in the story, and I was feeling it, and so that was a flaw for me in female representation and power. The way that they made it.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
I agree with that, and that's why I think it's part of the movie. Like, that's why I saw the stretch, right? And so, in them trying to, I think maybe the attempt was, and it probably was so many different factors going in with trying to make this movie work. But when I watched that, I went, oh, this is bad, right? And so it not only from hearing, thank you all for sharing that perspective. So not only in disempowering in that way, it also, I think, really devalued the movie and what they could have done with that. And I said, I think I said this yesterday, like, the way it ended, at the end of it, I'm like, they should have just recast them if they were going to do this. It's like, what? Oh. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, so I guess now, like, what are folks hopeful for in the next one? Because I walked out like, this is my last. The first one is the only one that exists to me. I don't know. I never saw a second one.
You said this multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that, for starters, the entire Marvel Phase 4 was...
Explain what that is for people, too.
So Marvel, the cinematic universe, what we know to be the grouping of movies that have all made, tied together for the last, I don't know, 12 years now. So within that universe, this last phase, which is considered Phase 4, which started with WandaVision and just ended with... what was it? I believe it just ended with one of the shows. I'm spacing out on it right now, but Wakanda Forever is a part of that. It may have even ended with Wakanda Forever. So that entire phase has been struggling. The reviews are ups and downs, a lot of plot holes, some of the same things that you are complaining about with this movie. I think that's another reason why I went in with not so high expectations, is I have been following all of these movies, and it has been the same result. Like they're good. They're good enough, but none of them have really blown you away. Maybe like one. and so that's probably why my expectation was like that. So as far as you asking me how I'm hopeful about that, Marvel themselves have come out and said phases 5 and 6, which they've already lined up for everyone. 5 and 6 is currently being revamped, and they're focusing on quality over quantity. Whereas this past phase, it was definitely quantity over quality. And we've talked about it. Like all of the movies that we did catch, is like, whatever happened to that last, it's like, I don't know, because we got we got the end credit scene, and we never touched on that
Like,
person or group or anything again. So so I think I'm more hopeful because of that. As far as like the events of the movie that that make me hopeful are just the simple fact that Namor is what they consider an anti-hero. Always has been in the comics and everything. It's like we're meant to love this person, but also can be ruthless and can be the villain. And in this case, we saw him as the villain. But the way that the movie ended, I am hopeful that we will see him and his people in a better light in another movie, the next go around. Same thing with Shuri, where she did not seem ready to take up the mantle in this movie, and nothing that she did made me feel like yes, she is the Black Panther. It was more like a damn it.
That's the Black Panther.
So it's like, so I'm very hopeful that even like story wise, that we will get to revisit that. Right, in a better story arc. Where we see Namor and we see Shuri and we see, everyone in such a better light. And I think they're going to do a much better a job of bringing everyone together in the next iteration of that. So I am very hopeful for it because of those things. But it's mainly, I think it was the studio dropping a ball all over the place that just led up to them dropping the ball. It was with this
a lot of fumbles. It was like, that's a lot.
It was a lot of fumbles. And one of the better things too that, let me tell you, that came out from all of this, Lupita is like the fact that she came out and said, I was raised in Mexico, or I was born in Mexico, was I believe is what she was. So she speaks Spanish, and like the relationship that her and I forget the actor's name who played Namor.
I don't remember his name either. No.
Yeah, it was. I have the IMDb here, so if I look at my phone, don't judge me. But they when they were, I'll figure it out. When they were doing the press run, and they would get up and like you'd see Lupita and they're dancing merengue and like, and it's like a very cultural thing that you can see, and I'm like, man, like that is beautiful to see.
That's dope. I actually was hoping that she was gonna be the Black Panther.
I mean, same.
I was like, go ahead and get that to her.
Because she was tough. She was tough.
Yeah.
She's tough in that series.
So you hopeful that they will get it together?
Very hopeful that they're going to get it together. I think unfortunately, we're probably not going to see another Black Panther movie for quite some time.
Yeah, I agree.
But we will see the characters, especially with the mashups, because there are like Avengers movies where they all going to come together.
I'm hopeful with the next movie that they first hear the mixed reviews, right? Like that's because it is. There's many reasons I think Marvel movies mean something to people, whether it be like nostalgia from comics or like people can connect to characters. But this is like and again, this is a responsibility they may not have asked for, but it's there. It's like this is a cultural representation of people. And if you are going to play that and exploit our dollars, because a lot of that in the first movie was us making this valuable. Like we went out and dressed appropriately. Like we promote like that. So if you're going to do that, you can't play with that. Like that's important for folks. So I want to see that. And then I just want to see them get the characters right in terms of in the right position. So Shuri was amazing in the first movie for all the reasons that you said. This was not that. It was hard for me to see her in that light. And I don't even think as an actor that's her. she probably wasn't ready for that either. And with all the things that happened like outside of the actual recording of the movie, all the different issues and dramas, I think led to like, she was, probably still grieving. It's like she was really grieving, right?
truly
Like this is like third hand grieving. She was there, right? But also that, I don't think that really fit her role, her character. So we can get her back to where she needed to be because she was perfect where she was. Amazing range and amazing really actor in that way, but this wasn't it.
Yeah.
So if we can realign people where they need to be, that'd be amazing. And I'm not gonna lie, I think one of the highlights of the movie though, and if he can come back, was Killmonger. When they came around the corner and he was there, I'm like, okay, it took me back to my roots. Like this was good.
That was another big idea that people had. They thought Killmonger was going to come back
and be the Black Panther. Yeah. Well, I'm actually glad they did not do that. That just would have been a reach. But it was good to see him.
A real reach.
But yeah, so I'm hopeful for that. So if I had to sum all that up, it would be let's realize how much it matters, like the representation and what you're doing on that screen for people, and let's be intentional about that. And then also, again, let's get the characters where they need to be. I think this was all over the place, So that's what I would say. What about y'all? What are y'all hopeful for?
So I am not a Marvel human. I feel so bad half the time. I don't know what people be talking about. I never looked at this movie like a Marvel movie. And so trying to put into context of what it needs to be based off comics and what it should be based off like trajectory, I don't really know. For me personally, I truly want to see Namor and the Talokan like civilization highlighted in more of a positive manner, along with working with Wakanda. Like I'm looking forward to that and seeing them like utilize each other, reach out to each other for certain like bad guys that may come up, because I don't trust, based on how it went in the movie, I don't trust Elaine from Seinfeld because I don't know what her name is in the movie or how she played with the purple hair. And it was just a weird casting there. And I love Elaine, but why were you in this movie? I don't trust what she has coming up. I don't like how she treated her ex-husband because he was our one guy. He was the only support we had.
Oh, the colonizer.
Yeah, the colonizer who had the beads and she was bugging them. It was like, you bugged those beads. It was so much ridiculousness. I'm hopeful that somehow, because they broke him out of going to jail, but I hope somehow things tie back to a goal where it's less about the heavy grief, because I understand that we were all grieving, but the movie was so much of that heavy grief. Like Shuri was just walking around in it in a black cloud that she really wasn't present. So I'm hopeful that things kind of shift back into the action, into focus, into, freedoms and supporting one another. That
having a purpose.
Yes. Yes. It was so bad.
Yeah, for me, I feel hopeful. I want to feel hopeful. Feeling hopeful is a decision that I am making because, if like you were saying, if the story that we're going to be telling is the story of our conflict, okay, maybe you can tell me the story of our conflict and you can show me that part of it. And then maybe you can show me, Talokan and Wakanda recognizing that, hey, remember at the beginning of this movie, wasn't it France sneaking up into our stuff, trying to steal our vibranium?
Preach.
And, hey, wait a minute, isn't Talokan coming up? Because they weren't messing with the surface people at all, right? Like, that was not their deal. And so now aren't they coming up because here we are again with the U.S. government, and they're coming and they're trying to steal our resources. And, they already enslaved and oppressed our people so much that we had to go live underwater. And here we are being threatened again. So it makes sense to me that like, here we go. I'm not messing with this. Y'all got to die, right? So like, can we get to a place in the next one where we see, wait, we were both against each other, but the real threat here are these colonizer governments who are coming up trying to take our resources and trying to mess with our people and threatening us again. And so we're fighting each other, but we're not the ones in conflict. And I think Namor knew that. Like, that's why he came up and was like, I could have wiped y'all out, but I am coming to you in this, in this delta, on this whatever, to have this conversation with you, because it's not us versus us. It's us together protecting ourselves, our people, our resources that we love, and keeping them safe. So if the next movie takes us there, then I think that could help me make peace with what this movie did. So I feel intentionally hopeful that could happen, would happen, will happen. And yeah, you called her Elaine from Seinfeld. What's her? I know her as Selena Myers from Veep. I don't know,
Oh,
but she isn't she gonna be like Hydra?
So she is actually putting together the Thunderbolts, which is like the Avengers. It's like the bad Avengers kind of, or taking all of these villains, like the villains, and putting them towards a better good. The best way that I can explain that, and that's if you've seen it, but what Suicide Squad
Yes.
is for DC
Yes,
is
now it makes sense.
the latest one was better. The first one wasn't.
one.
Yeah.
There's a second one.
Yeah, it was completely redone.
That's
Never
one of the
seen
movies
it.
where I slid out early. I barely do that, but
Yeah,
I'm gone, y'all.
You got to watch the second one because the first one wasn't done correctly.
Was Viola in this new one too?
Yes.
Was
It was
Will
a
Smith?
it was a soft reboot, whereas they don't acknowledge that the other one
Existed?
certain things in the other one existed, but they don't quite just say, "Hey, no, this is like a complete reboot."
Wow.
Yeah.
Certain the better parts of that
Gotcha.
exist.
Good to know.
But
Yeah.
go, you going on the path. I want to lose it.
But yeah, but she is actually putting together that group. So if you follow Marvel and all of the things that she has popped up a couple of times in Marvel, she actually popped up in an end credit scene for Scarlet. I'm sorry. I keep wanting to say
Natasha.
Scarlett Johansson, but yeah, the Black Widow.
Yeah.
So she popped up there and she recruited Yelena, her sister, which was the whole purpose of that movie, was to introduce this.
That makes
you
sense.
know, and then she popped up again in Falcon and Winter Soldier to recruit the agent, the fake Captain America.
Yeah.
So she's putting together a band of misfits, and that's her whole purpose
Got
in
it.
this.
That's what the
Who from
introduction.
this is she stealing as a misfit?
I think there was more along the lines of tying her in with I forget the
Ironheart?
agent's name.
Oh.
Yeah, well, she's going to be popping up more often. But I think her whole involvement in this is just because the government was involved and she is part of the government. Just showing her role within the government because before in the other shows, she's just popping up and just saying, hey, and trying to instigate certain things.
Got it.
Now we saw her in a full role and where she is within the government, playing this. So I think it was more along the lines of that.
This is a solid introduction into what's coming.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. All right. Yeah. So anything else I want to leave to the audience? This was an amazing discussion.
Well, Namor, who also is called like the submarine in the comic universe, right?
The Submariner or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's a submarine. His dad was whatever. Anyway, there's like a lot of comics about him. He's been around since like the 1930s, isn't it?
He was actually Aquaman was actually stolen
From
him. He was first.
You can't
So-
have anything. That's crazy. Look at that.
So I think it would be like he's got stories. He does things in the comics. So I hope that maybe they give us that piece of it, right? Like they could take it maybe and give us a whole world and a whole storyline of his own, and we could be in it with Namor and Talocan, and I think that would
That
be
would be
beautiful.
cool. Yeah.
So maybe maybe that could happen.
He does. I want to say he, if again, going back to Marvels, and I'm not like a big Marvel stan. I just love movies
sound like
in
it.
general. because I love movies in general.
I'm with you.
So, but apparently he was supposed to be part of the Illuminati that showed up in Doctor Strange. I know you had not seen that, but the Illuminati is a group of a futuristic group in the comics that come together and set rules in this particular setting.
Yeah.
They came out in Doctor Strange, the second one, the Multiverse of Madness, a version of them. People were not happy about that, but Namor was supposed to be one of the individuals on that top group.
Gotcha.
So yes, Namor is a big character.
He's
in
a
the comics.
standalone. Like he can have his own.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's
he can.
a very big character, and people, I don't know if people really wanted to see Namor in these movies, but I guess the biggest battles that he's had in comics were with Wakanda and Black Panther and all of that. Now, I definitely want to see him in a better light, in a more powerful role, like amongst all these other people, especially because of the way that they portrayed him in the movies.
Yeah.
Like the comic books, like whatever, but like you said, he was supposed to be Atlantis. Like this was supposed to be Atlantis, but they decided against that because Aquaman had already come out.
Right.
So now with the creation of Talocan, and like the twist that they put on it, I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that.
What about you? What you want to get the audience with?
I'm so sorry. I was so, because I don't know Marvel. I've literally like, okay, trying to like process it all.
Me too. I'm learning as well.
Yeah, I'm sitting here like the Illuminati. I was like, what are we talking about? Did not know that had anything to do with anything. So I hope all the best for Marvel. I hope quality comes out more, because like I think I asked you what happened to the Eternals.
Yeah,
I went to the movies.
Yeah,
what happened to
I don't know either.
No idea. So we'll see. Here's, maybe I'll go back. Maybe I'll try.
You should try to get in there. Yeah, that's good. And I think
making no promises.
Nah, but I'm with you though. It's like quality over quantity for the movies. And then just in general, I actually appreciate the fact that like how like this was a movie, right? But we can like take apart so many real life things from this and like dive into like what does this mean metaphorically and how does this apply to our lives and how can we dive into that. And it's like I like art in that way because it's like no perspective is wrong. I actually appreciate how we can do that. So if anything, it's like, let's do more of this. I think we can look at things that are art in this way and actually apply them and make better decisions in our actual lives, right?
Right.
In our cultural lives, in our society. So I think this was a good job. If anything, I think this was a good opportunity to do that. They just got to do it better so we can enjoy it for sure, But yeah, and people probably watching right now thinking, what in the world are they talking about? Look, y'all, we might be right.
We might be wrong.
But at the end of the day,
we're just young, black, and figured out.
And brown. Figured out, yes.
CC on the track, boy.